G'day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Knowledge and Mileage podcast with your host, Kris Gethin. What's up, guys? This is a new episode for us today. We did the first 8 covering the 8-week hardcore video trainer reboot. So I was sending additional hints, tips, hacks, you name it, and hopefully they helped a lot of you out. So the reviews have been pretty good. Thank you very much. Speaking of which, if you do like this podcast, please let me know. Tell me if I suck. Tell me if I'm good. Tell me if I'm bad. Tell me if I should go and try golf. Or leave a very nice review and let me know what you like, what you don't like. Tell your friends. And of course, please do subscribe. Today, I'm going to give you my backstory. A lot of people have been asking, I would like to know how you got into the industry, what it was that enticed you into it, and what continues to motivate you today. So that's what I'm going to give you today. If any of you have read my most recent book, which is my autobiography, motivational memoir, I like to call it, and that is called The Transformer, that you can get on chrisgethin.com, then you'll probably be bored. You've heard this before. But for those of you who haven't, I'll give you a very brief rundown of that introduction. So I was born in Wales back in a couple of centuries ago. And I grew up on a farm in mid-Wales. And from a very young age, I started racing motocross, and that became my life. I just loved it. I hated school. I hated the teachers. Well, not so much the teachers. I just hated the system. I just did not want to be there. I feel anxious just thinking about it. People who say, school years are the best of your life, those people don't live or have not lived. It was just not for me. I'm not saying don't go and get an education, but that education just wasn't working for me at that particular time. It was content that didn't entice me, so I wasn't able to retain it. But motocross, I absolutely loved it. I loved the endorphin rush. I loved the way that it made me feel. And I just wanted to spend every minute that I was in the school on the bike. I wanted to go back to the farm and get on a bike. And the farm wasn't much an adventure for me. At that time, I was an only child until my sister came along about 10 years later. And, I just enjoyed being by myself and being out there in the fields, or, when my family would visit, or I'd go and visit my family, my cousins, playing with them, going down the river, etc., etc. And I was racing motocross, for about 11, 12 years. And I did have a few injuries that, that did become a bit of a problem. Asthma was a problem at that time as well. And I had a back injury that just came about over time. So if you were to look at my scans right now, I have a severe curvature of my spine. And at that time, I had no muscle that really held it together. So I'd kind of collapse upon my nerves, and it would leave me in a lot of pain. It was a lot of discomfort. And I went to osteopaths, chiropractors, specialists, and it wasn't until I actually started doing rehab through weight training that it alleviated the pain. It took the pressure away from my spine, taut the muscle fibers within my back that would allow my skeleton to be a little bit more suspended as opposed to collapsed. So I was hooked on weight training from that moment on for therapeutic value as opposed to vanity. And, I'd put on a bit of weight based on the depression that I was going through at the time because I couldn't get that endorphin rush through motocross. And I found that I was getting an endorphin rush from actually weight training hard, that is. So that released some of those feel-good hormones. I'd put on a bit of weight from that depression, so I was able to get in better shape, alleviate myself from the back pain. So lo and behold, I was hooked. I left my job at that particular time, and I've gone through a lot of jobs. I've worked in wood furniture warehouses. I've worked as a panel beater. I've worked in bars. I've worked in an aluminium factory doing shift work from 6 in the morning till 6 in the evening. The following week would be 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning. My body clock was all over the place. I worked on a building site. I've had many, many jobs. So then I decided I was going to go back to college and study international health and sports therapy. So I came away 3 years later with qualifications in pretty much every type of massage you can think of, from aromatherapy, remedial, Swedish, sports, deep tissue, everything, and I've become a qualified personal trainer, coach, rehab specialist, nutritionist, and then I went and worked on cruise liners. I needed something to get me out of the partying scene in Wales. I decided after I started weight training, I'd devote myself and commit myself to a bodybuilding show, so I had a sense of urgency. So in 1999, I competed in my very first bodybuilding show, which was an untested event. I had no idea there was such thing as natural shows and untested shows. So I got second in that event. I was definitely by far the smallest, but I was peeled. I was pretty much shredded. I didn't know much other than going 0 carbs for 8 weeks, and that's what I did. I was delirious in the end. I remember actually going to a cash point machine, an ATM, and when it gave me money, I actually thanked the machine. My head was in bits, but I was very, very low fat, and the suffering obviously paid off because I walked away with second place from that show. And then, about a month after, I went and got a contract on cruise liners, and that was leaving out of Fort Lauderdale here in the US, and that would go around the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and I worked on that cruise liner to begin with as a personal trainer, but I quickly realized that the massage therapists got better tips, because I did not know there was such a thing as a tip system until I came to the US. So then I started doing massage on that cruise liner, and I was a sports therapist that worked with various electrical treatments such as ultrasound, audiosonic, faradic, ionothermy, and yes, I was even doing facials there for a little while. And after about 8 months on that cruise liner, I decided to move to Australia. So I moved to Australia then and decided, you know what, I'm going to go there and see if I can pick up a job as personal training there. I had a friend that was over there that we'd worked together on cruise liners. So we decided to go back to Australia, and I set up shop in Sydney within 24 or 48 hours from me landing. I actually got a job in a place called Bodyline, which was in North Sydney, and I worked on the gym floor there for a little while, just putting the weights back, giving people a spot, helping people out, and then at that same time I was actually delivering leaflets as part of my cardio that I'd had made up. It's like a trifold leaflet with a company name on there called Future Physique, and I was offering personal training and transformation packages. And I started getting some calls, and I was training people basically either in their homes, on the beaches, in parks. I had some equipment that I'd purchased, a Total Trainer. You may have seen them advertised by Chuck Norris on TV. I had some boxing pads and gloves, a skipping rope, a couple of kettlebells, and that's all I needed, and an ab mat. And quickly my roster became quite full, and I was living the life, baby. I was like in between clients. I'd be on Balmoral Beach and I'd go for a swim in the water, in between clients, or I could be right in front of the Opera House, and the weather was beautiful. And I really enjoyed picking up that position there. But it was hard work. Not only was I working in Bodyline to make ends meet, I was actually working on the street. So I'd be giving out like newspapers. I was actually in shopping malls giving away, offering sampling chocolates. I remember that was when the Lindt Ball chocolates just came out. And there's a drink called Up and Go. That was it, Up and Go, that came in like a Tetris pack. And I was, that had just come out, and I was giving them out, offering them. I was doing any job that I could, working from very early in the morning till late in the night, just so I could make ends meet and actually, get myself an apartment, get in a car, etc. And after a while, and when I say a while, 3 years of doing that, I'd saved enough money to actually purchase a gym. And that was probably a very bad decision, because I was living a pretty good life doing mobile training. However, the traffic is pretty bad in Sydney, and I thought a gym would kind of fix that. So I moved from the northern beaches and central Sydney out to the western suburbs to a place called Granville near Parramatta there, and had a gym. And the only problem with that is now I was basically taking my first client at 6 o'clock in the morning, and my last client would be finishing at 9 o'clock at night. And I was working very long hours. It was tiring me out, but I was really enjoying the transformations that I was able to witness with my clients, because they were going through phenomenal transformations. And at this point, I was only offering 12-week transformation packages and 18-week transformation packages. If that client was coming in obese, then I would have to allow 18 weeks. Anything less than that, I'd be able to transform that client in 12. That idea was to create like a boot camp of education and transformation that they could carry for the rest of their lives, so they didn't have to be always dependent upon me, but they'd gain all the tools necessary to continue to maintain a healthy lifestyle by transforming from that platform that we'd created for them. So I was working Saturdays, I was working partly Sundays, I believe, and I got burnt out pretty quick. When I say pretty quick, a couple of years. It takes a couple of years to burn me out. But during this time, I was also writing. I wanted to reach out to more people other than just one-on-one. So I taught myself how to write. I was a terrible writer, so I bought Merriam-Webster's book, I believe, on journalism, and some books on grammatical writing. And I taught myself to write and started submitting content to various publications around the world until it started to stick, which took several months of persistence. And that I started getting published in several magazines. And at this time, about 2 years after owning the gym, I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to risk everything and see if we can make a go of this in the US, and kind of up and leave and go to Venice, California. So that's where we went. We headed over there, and I started submitting content to my then friend, Sean Perrine. I say then, he is still my friend, but he passed away a couple of months ago. He was a senior writer over at Flex magazine, and to another senior writer called Greg Merritt. Both of these gentlemen I got to know quite well when I moved to Venice, California. I started submitting the content to them, who would then take the content up to Woodland Hills to the main office and give it to Peter McGough, who was then the editor-in-chief of the magazine. And after about 6 months of my annoyance, they actually invited me up to the offices. I'd met Peter a couple of times when I was writing content for Flex magazine in the UK, and Muscle and Fitness magazine in Australia. And that was all due to my very, very good friend, best friend, Gary Phillips, who was then the editor-in-chief of Weeder Publications in Australia. So it was him that really got me noticed first by Peter McGough. And then it was my move to the US of persistence that actually got me a contract through Peter McGough and Flex magazine. So I was a writer, and I also got a contract as a photographer, because during this time I'd bought myself a 40D Canon, and Gary taught me how to use this thing as good as I could. And I was able to better sell and submit my content if I had images to accompany my content. So if I was doing an interview or an article piece on a professional bodybuilder, for instance, I would also shoot one of their workouts, so I'd have the imagery to go with the workout. And I love doing fly-on-the-wall hardcore video shoots and making the content very hardcore, gritty, warrior style. During this time, I was also competing in Australia. Before moving to the US, I'd competed in the Sydney titles, the New South Wales titles, and the Australian titles. And I came second in every single one of these shows, and I think I missed out by 1 point in every single one of those shows. So yeah, it was pissing me off. I think I would prefer to have fifth and second coming that close. But they were natural. These were now natural bodybuilding shows. So I was on a level playing field, and it was very exciting because I was looking up to other bodybuilders there, such as Mark Costanti, who I thought were absolute freaks. I thought these guys have to be on something. But I got to know Mark very well and started actually become his training partner, and just realized that, you know, guys like Mark were just training on a completely different level. And I knew that I had to really increase my mental agility and intensity in order to even think about going up against any of those guys. So that's what I did over time. And when in the US as a writer and photographer, I was still competing, and this time I represented Australia in the Natural World Championships, which was held up in Toronto, Canada, and I got second there as well. Another second, go figure. And after a couple of years of writing for that publication, I decided, you know what, I don't want any of my stuff edited. I want my images to go up exactly how I like it, hardcore, gritty, grainy. So I decided to then launch my own magazine, which was launched as Caged Muscle Magazine. I had that magazine for 2 years. 2 years as a hard copy, no, 1 year as a hard copy publication, and 2 years as an online publication. And putting this publication out actually got me noticed by Ryan DeLuca of bodybuilding.com. He needed an editor-in-chief for his website back then, and this is 2007, and I was doing a bit of freelance work for him. So he had seen my publication, he knew I could edit, he knew I could write, he knew I could shoot, and he knew that I competed in bodybuilding. So he flew me up to Boise, Idaho. I interviewed for the position, and I got offered the position. So then I decided to leave LA, thankfully, for Boise. Nothing against LA, but I'm just not a city slicker. I much prefer the outdoors and the four seasons and the country and the small town atmosphere and the quietness, and Boise definitely had it. And so I moved up to Boise as the editor-in-chief of bodybuilding.com, and then during this time, there was like 30 of us in the office at that time, and I was one of the only people that was actually working out and competing. So Ryan decided to forcefully put me in front of the camera instead of behind it, which I protested for a while, but reluctantly agreed, and now I can't thank him enough for pushing me in that direction, because then further from that I started hosting video series, video trainers. I published a book with them called Body by Design, and then I decided to actually start selfishly a food company called Nutrition by Design with my then business partner Ruben Navrate, and which was perfect because I was traveling a lot and I needed something that would actually hold me down. So it was like a pot noodle, if you will, but it was a healthy version with freeze-dried chicken or freeze-dried beef with brown rice, with whole grain pasta, etc. And we had that for a couple of years as well while I was working at BBCom. And then, God, this is now fast forward to about end of 2010, I had to leave the country. I had to leave the US because the lawyer that I had that was working on my immigration, at that time I was here on a business visa, had not applied for my extension, would you believe it? And I was informed by another lawyer that I'd employed to look into this because something was amiss, and they found out this was in fact the case, and I literally had, from finding out, had a couple of weeks to leave the country, because if I'd overextended over a year, I could be banned from coming back into the US by 10 years. As it stood, I had a 5-year ban, possibly. Worst case scenario, I did not want to double it to 10. So within 2 weeks, I left the US with my house intact. I had friends look after my pets. It was a terrible scenario, but I was very hopeful, thinking, you know what, I'll be back in a couple of weeks. It's a bad mistake on someone else's behalf. They will see that. I'll be back. That didn't happen. It took over a year for me to get that waiver back. The waiver approved for me to come back, even though I had letters from publishers, the world's best publishers, the people in charge of the IFBB Federation, multi-Mr. Olympias, celebrities, etc., and nothing really helped. Took about a year, and during that time I had to foreclose on the property. Everything had to be put into storage. My family, my mum and dad flew over and put everything into storage, and everything that I'd kind of saved up for had been lost. I lost a tremendous amount of money on that home that I had to be foreclosed on. So it was a very bad time in my life. But during that time, I decided to fill that void by moving to India. I'd had offers from India, and my friend Jag Chima had told me about this actor called Hrithik Roshan, who actually wanted me to train him. And I took a phone call from Hrithik as I was shopping around Tesco's in Wales, and asked if I'd train him. So I flew over to India for that consultation to see if this guy was serious, and decided, okay, I'll train this guy. That's exactly what I did. I transformed him over an 11-week period, and his transformation was so great, it hit the headlines of the newspapers, the TV, which led to a huge demand of other celebrities who then wanted to transform and get in shape. So ended up staying in India for several years, training clients, and myself and Jag Chima and Neil Hill, we had a company, do have a company there called Physique Global, that actually certifies trainers in our principles of DTP and Y3T, and actually provides training now to other celebrities there. Anyway, I moved from there back to the US because during that time, that's when we started working on caged muscle. There was a huge void in the market when it came to supplementation. I was actually mixing and formulating a lot of my own products and single fill ingredients that I knew were efficacious and that were patented, but it was time consuming, and it definitely wasn't something that other people had access to. So that's when myself, Brian Rand, and Michael McLean had actually spoke about creating something very different that the market had yet to see. But we knew that it was going to be very expensive. It would require a very, very sharp margin of profit on our behalf. It was going to be a risk, but it was a risk that we were willing to take. We knew that we wouldn't be left with any money to put into marketing and fancy labeling and advertising through various publications and giving out a load of free websites and being at all the expos. But we knew, okay, if we put everything into the actual product instead and let the product speak for itself, hopefully that will gain word of mouth, and it will create a ripple effect that will inspire other people to actually not only take a supplement for performance purposes, but for their health purposes. We wanted to bridge that gap. So that's what we did. And we started off with some single fill ingredients, and other supplement company owners that I know very, very well thought I was absolutely crazy launching with glutamine and BCAA, but we decided that's what we're going to do, and we wanted to launch with fermented ingredients instead of the usual synthetically derived harsh chemical branch chain amino acids and glutamine that can be derived from human hair, bird feathers, and animal fur, which is absolutely disgusting. I didn't want to put that stuff in my body. I put my body through enough inflammatory responses as it is. So we launched with that, and people were getting very, very good responses in regards to their recovery and muscle protein synthesis. And it started to take hold and take shape, and people started talking about us. Then we launched that line even further as you see it today. And it's become like, when we launched on bodybuilding.com, it became the fastest selling, fastest growing company in their history. When we launched on Vitamin Shop, it became the fastest growing company in their history, and still is. And we have not put anything behind the marketing, but the people have spoken that they wanted something like this that would bridge that gap between sports performance and health, because we were the only company, and are, that not only certifies our products of being Prop 65 Act of heavy metal contaminants. We're third-party tested. We naturally flavor, naturally color our products. We only use patented ingredients or fermented ingredients or organic ingredients. We're very, very different to everything else out there, especially when you consider that every single one of our products, when you put them together, are all efficaciously dosed, which a lot of them aren't. They're they're proprietary blends, or they're fairy dusted, or they're generic ingredients. So we're very, very happy that that has actually taken hold there. As far as competition, I gave up competing back in 2009. I competed, I think it was the Idaho titles that I competed in as a heavyweight. I actually won that show, again, another drug tested show. And it was funny because I had no more pleasure coming first than I would sort of second is very, very weird. I'd say the show day for me in any event is the worst day, because that's where everything comes to an end. I much prefer the journey in getting there, so that's why now I don't compete, but I'll go now from Ironman events to ultramarathon to bodybuilding to fat loss to muscle building. I love the journey of exploration and using my body as a healthy guinea pig in testing these various supplements. And even though some people may say, well, that's bro science, eating 6 meals a day and taking these supplements, they don't really help. Well, my body has evolved year after year after year. For me to be training over 20 years now and still being able to evolve, well, it goes to show that all these little tiny changes and hacks that I make obviously have a positive effect. So, call it what you will. I say the shred of evidence is within myself, and success leaves clues. So I'm happy with the success that I've gained in that regard so far. Now, one more thing. Whilst I was in India, there was definitely a huge void when it came to the industry of health and fitness. A lot of trainers there didn't seem like they were very motivated. They weren't recognized either, through their peers or monetary recognized. And a lot of the time they were treated like dogs' bodies when it comes to their actual clients would actually tell the trainer what to do, which didn't come as a surprise when some of them were very uneducated in the means of personal training. So we decided we wanted to educate these people. So we certified over 800 trainers in DTP and Y3T. And then not only that, we wanted a training academy for these people and provide a gym facility that was not there in India as it was and still isn't, until we launched the Kris Gethin Gyms franchise a couple of years ago. So now we have four gyms. We've got 2 in Hyderabad, 1 in Mohali, and 1 in Chembur in Mumbai. And we're going to be opening now another 3 gyms, I believe, in 2018. And we'll be looking to expand overseas as well. So these gyms are very, very high-end facilities, definitely the highest that you'll see in India. And we have celebrities coming through the door, we have sports stars coming through the door, and we have your regular Joes who want to come in and transform using my principles. And that has seen some tremendous growth and recognition, which is fantastic. And, that is what we're going to expand now overseas. So that is pretty much my backstory. What I thankfully have, I don't really have any talent. I don't have any natural abilities, but I got myself a good work ethic from growing up on the farm. My parents were very, very instrumental in my thought process and how I should perceive things. I wasn't given anything on a silver platter. I'm very, very glad that they didn't give me anything that would make me complacent, because if you take their hand, then obviously that hand is always going to be reaching out, wanting more, because that's what it gets used to. And I wasn't really given that, and I can't thank them enough, because it's made me to go out and become very much an individual and independent in my thought process and how I can survive, because I couldn't survive with them in regards that they're going to, let me live there for the rest of my life. And if I want to go on holiday, I'm not going to ask them for money in order to do so, because I know what that answer would have been. So I can't thank them enough for instilling that within me, and that's the only talent that I've had, basically, is to actually work hard at it. And obviously this is a passion for me, so I persist with it and I'm able to retain it. I find it very interesting. I'm always trying to learn new things about my health that can respectively help me as a bodybuilder and as an athlete at the same time. But that could be another episode that I could talk about forever. But that is my backstory. That is where Kris Gethin came from. Who knows where he's going to head to next, but that will give you a little bit of an insight. So that is it for today's episode of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. Remember, please do leave a review. Tell me if I suck or not. And subscribe and share with others. Thank you very much, guys. Kris Gethin, I'm out.